What's up, everybody? We have 10-ish minutes here with Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn. He's joining us today to talk about, well, actually many different calibers and how they all interact with our BDC reticles. So in some ways, you could call this truing your BDC to your particular cartridge, leaving your particular gun's barrel in your particular environment. There's actually a lot of particulars involved in this whole thing. So basically, I'll give the gist of it, then Ryan, you take it away. A lot of people get a rifle scope with a generic dead hole BDC reticle in it, even perhaps a caliber specific BDC in it, and they think, well, hey, it's good to go. Every 100-yard increment, each one of these hash marks lines up. Well, not necessarily, because there are all of those particulars that we mentioned, and so that makes it a bit complicated, and you're thinking, geez, guys, it was really easy before. Why did you have to make it more difficult? It's not too difficult, though. There's only a few things, and this is where Ryan is going to take over. This is how we can actually figure out truly where each of those hash marks in your BDC, at what distance they correlate to your bullet's trajectory through the air, what distances will you be holding over exactly on them, and then otherwise maybe making some subtle Kentucky windage estimations. So, how does it work, Ryan?
Okay.
Why is it that it's not always a perfect match?
Because if we were to do a caliber-specific BDC for your gun, we would have to know your gun intimately, like the individual firearm, the exact load that you plan on shooting through it, the zero distance, and then some environmentals.
And hope that they never change.
Correct. And because of the enormous variability in firearms across, the various manufacturers, even gun-to-gun consecutive serial numbers, they all behave very differently. So there are some things to take into consideration. And truth be told, we cannot make a BDC exactly for a given cartridge bullet rifle combination. You can get approximations that get you very close. And we have some examples of that, like in our Spitfire HD Gen 2 Prism scopes. They have the AR BDC, and we've got that AR BDC in like the Strike Eagle and things like that. They're based off of average ballistic curves, looking at a variety of different projectiles and weights at a variety of different velocities. And you can come up with a really strong semblance of a line at 100, 200, 300, 400, so on and so forth. But if you really want to ring it out and you want to find out to the yard what your BDC does and like what it's going to represent, you need a few things. A good ballistics calculator. We've got one on our website. It's our LRBC. Top right-hand part of the website, you're going to see a bullet-shaped icon, LRBC, orange letters. You can even Google the word ballistics calculator. There's one on there. And there's a variety of different applications you can get for your mobile device, too. You'll need your load data, either from the box, your bullet weight, your caliber, your ballistic coefficient, and muzzle velocity, zero distance. This is baseline. So with the back of the box ammunition, if you don't have access to a chronograph, you can still do this. I'm going to speak to the chronograph portion first, because this is really how you ring it out. We can jump into if you don't have a chronograph in a little bit. But first things first, we're going to establish a zero distance, and we'll just say 100 yards because it's easy. You're going to then chronograph your load. So I'd like to do a 3 or 5 shot string over the chrono, get a good average. You're going to take that number and your zero distance, your bullet weight, bullet diameter, and ballistic coefficient. You're going to plug these into the ballistics calculator. And that is going to then populate your drop chart or dope chart. You then look at the column in drop. Most of our BDCs, actually all of our BDCs are, no, that's not true. We do have an MRAD BDC, G4I.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Most BDCs,
friggin' European style.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said friggin'
the
European
Speedo
stuff.
of BDCs.
The Speedo of BDCs, the old banana hammock BDC.
Holy buckets.
Are we going to get this back on track?
Can we even at this point?
I don't know.
Most of our BDCs are set up in MOA, and they have known values. All of them are second focal plane. And so most of them are going to be set up at the highest magnification or near the highest magnification. Your scope will tell you in your manual where that subtension magnification is. And it's probably going to be the highest mag. But we then take the known values of that BDC and we cross-reference them with our drop chart. So picking on the dead hole BDC, because that's our most popular BDC, The values at subtension magnification from the center of the reticle are 1.5, 4.5, 7.5, and 11 MOA. So all we would do is then scoot over to our drop chart, which has done all the fancy math for us, and we find the yardage correlating to as close to that drop as possible. So if you'd like, I'll run up a little solution here real quick.
Why don't we?
Yeah,
please.
So I'm going to just grab a simple ballistics calculator that I have on my phone. I'm going to grab Mark's 300 WISM load.
Oh.
I'm going to set his zero distance for 100 yards.
Saved on Ryan's phone, Mark's load at all times.
You can either get a ballistics calculator on your phone or just have Ryan do it.
Just get a Ryan.
And I have it set here for us at Vortex at our range. In-house.
So what is that, about 900 feet in elevation?
1,134.
Whoa, we broke the 4-digit barrier.
Yeah, and today it's a little warmer, so we're going to set 70 degrees. Okay, so if I compute this and I go down this drop chart, and again, we're going to pretend Mark's shooting one of his favorite scopes, the Viper HSLR 4-16 by 50.
Fantastic.
And we're going to go down this drop chart, and we're going to find out what marks correlate with our BDC. So again, 1.5, 4.5, 7.5, and 11 MOA. Line 1 at exactly 1.5 MOA, Mark's first line, he will be at 230 yards. Line 2 at 4.5 MOA, we've got 4.45, so we're pretty darn close there. 0.05 MOA, very small difference. 380 yards. 7.5 for line 3. We are at 7.59, a little bit over, 510 yards. And for the heavy post at the bottom of the dead hold BDC, which is like the thick portion of the reticle where it then tapers to the fine part of the crosshair, at 11 MOA, almost on the nose, 10.94, we are at 630 yards.
So if he went in just assuming that it was clean 100-yard increments, he'd actually be off fairly considerably.
He would be. Well, I mean, yes and no.
That second hash is a little bit interesting.
The 230?
Wait, no.
That was the 380 or something.
The 380 one, I think, yeah.
Sure. So at 4.5 MOA, up 380 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the difference between it and the 400-yard mark would be about a half an MOA. Just under a half MOA.
Gotcha.
So at that distance, we're talking, a whopping 2 inches.
Oh, okay.
So really, and this was intentional too. So the dead hold BDC is a pretty old reticle, and if you go back to how it was developed, when the folks in engineering were laying that out, they took average ballistic curves of dozens and dozens and dozens of cartridges and ran them out, and kind of overlaid them, and saw that for the most part they all track pretty consistently. And with a 100 or 200 yard zero, you get a pretty, we'll use a Jimmy term here, field expedient solution every 100 yards or so. Pretty close anyways, within a good margin of error that you're still ethical while hunting. So again, backing all this up, a few tools, ballistic calculator of some kind, muzzle velocity, ballistic coefficient, bullet weight, bullet diameter, zero distance. You can further refine this and really dig deep into the minutia of it all if you start inputting like environmental factors to your region. So if I ran this ballistic solution for Mark here at Vortex and he was to go hunt in like Colorado or Wyoming, somewhere high altitude, those values are going to change. So I'll run a second set of solutions at that altitude with those environmental conditions and get corrected numbers. So what happens if you don't have a chronograph? It kind of complicates things because that's a pretty big component of all this. The muzzle velocity is very important. But if you have access to a range from, say, 0 to 300 yards, you can get pretty close to what your muzzle velocity is by doing some back figuring. And what I do is I'll input into the calculator the box posted velocity. Mm-hmm. I'll zero at 100 yards, and I'll shoot then using my same point of aim. So I'm not correcting for any drop at 300 yards. I'll then go out there and I'll measure the drop from that point of aim to that bullet impact, and I'll start fudging the velocity number in the ballistic calculator to correct my drop until it gets as close to possible as that drop was measured at. And I like to shoot like 3-5 rounds there, kind of get a good semblance of a group so that I can really line it out and try to get close. That is kind of the old school way of determining muzzle velocity in the first place.
Guess and check.
Yep. And it's pretty good. I mean, it's probably plus minus 50 feet per second, I suppose, depending on your projectile and BC and where you're shooting.
It's much more likely to get you closer to the accurate number than is the box.
Yes, correct. And in doing that, you can true up pretty well. But don't look at a dead hold BDC as, a definitive, like it's every 100 yards, because it does have some variance depending on the cartridge that you're shooting. And also don't look at it like this very complicated thing that finding what those drops are going to be is going to be like an impossible task, because it's a phone call or an email or a chat away from us. We do it all the time. And that BDC too, to speak to what I think non-caliber specific BDCs bring to the table, is that it can be applied to anything. We have folks put these on crossbows, air guns, muzzle loaders, 50 BMGs, 338 Lapuas, 223s, everything, you name it. If it has a projectile that moves forward at a velocity of X, and you can measure its weight, diameter, and ballistic coefficient, you can determine what those marks are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unless you have something that's super specific, like the Spitfire and the Strike Eagle that you brought up earlier, those have caliber-specific reticles to the 5.56, because we know that the overwhelming majority of the firearms they'll go on are going to be chambered in 5.56, probably AR-15s.
Yeah.
So in that case, it makes sense to get a caliber-specific reticle.
Yep.
But otherwise, it really, even if you get a caliber-specific reticle, let's say for shooting more, precise stuff or maybe longer distances or on a different type of rifle, like a bolt action or something like that, it's still not going to be exact.
No.
And so if you're already not going to be exact, why not get a reticle that's a little bit more general and can be applied to multiple different things? If you ever intend to move it around or your environment changes, something changes, at least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I agree. To speak to the like the caliber specific BDCs that we do have, like the AR BDC 2 and 3 reticles, and the 9 now, the EBR 9 BDC and the Gen 3 1 to 10, we get a lot of questions like, do you folks plan on coming out with a reticle specific to X chambering?
300 blackout,
Yep.
6.8 SPC.
Or can my optic be mounted on that gun and work? And the answer is yes. The trick is getting out of the frame of mind that reticle will only work with this caliber designation, and using the same logic we talk about when discovering BDC's values, and just using that reticle. So those subtensions, those lines and their measurements are still known values. And if we just eliminate the words, caliber specific for this chambering, we can apply it to any caliber.
Yeah.
And we have folks, actually a really popular one is a Spitfire 3X on crossbows.
Yeah.
Folks love doing that. Works real good.
It's really difficult to separate. I've found once you see a yardage applied to a hash mark, it's difficult to separate that and actually look at it as an MOA value. Because a reticle, all it does is it gives us points of reference on top of our image that then allow us to use it as a basis for aiming. And those are spaced out in usually, like we said, MOA or sometimes MRAD in the case of BDC reticles, increments. And so if you just look at it that way and then you cross-reference your ballistics chart, you're like, oh, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, now it makes sense. All I got to do is use those. Who cares what yardage is sort of tied to them in the, for whatever caliber or whatever. It becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, though, the dead hold BDC, I will say, out of my Browning BLR in 308, it's as though it was made for it.
Yeah.
I mean, literally 1.5 at 200 yards. Oh, is that how it works? Wait, no. You hold that on for 1 to 200 yards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just 1.5, 4.5, 7, 11. Shoot. Now I'm sounding like an idiot because I'm getting my numbers mixed up.
7.5.
All I know is that the dang thing lines up perfectly with those lines. If, Ryan, let's say it didn't, let's say you have a rifle that doesn't line up perfectly with the lines, whatever, you're going to try and you are shooting at a distance other than what you've determined those lines line up to, right? So Mark is going to shoot at something and it's not at 380 yards, but it's also not at 200 and whatever yards. What do? Split the diff?
Yeah, yep. And you can actually kind of fudge your zero distance too to help get it aligned. And this is some time in a ballistic calculator and just pushing buttons and looking at the tabulation and where it lines out at. And I think that's more work than it's worth, perhaps. One thing I've noticed while hunting a field, it's rare that critters step out at exacting yardages. The predictability there is pretty low. And they also have a tendency to meander. So, it's going to give you a really solid point to start. And then The hold under component of that is going to come with some practice with your rifle, or at least some judicious studying of your drop tables and like what does that 20-yard difference between 380 and 200, or excuse me, 380 and 400 look like? In the case of your load, it's 2 inches, and that's nominal.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, at that point in time, if we're trying to shoot for a vital zone on a whitetail or a mule deer that's X large, we can anticipate that your heart rate is going to bump that 2 inches up and down, perhaps, at that distance.
Right.
So, don't overthink it. But of course, if you're stuck and you really want to line it out, just let us know. We can smooth that out easy.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the dead hold BDC though, is like you can get deep in the weeds if you want, and kind of accurize it or get your exact numbers that translate over to those subtension markings. But case in point, you ran my 300 WSM numbers there, and it's like, okay, cool, that's good to know. What'd we find out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Within a very reasonable margin of error at those numbers. Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but it's like we're talking hunting, right?
Yeah.
Which you end up with a bigger target. Somebody's probably going to have an issue with this, right?
Maybe.
You end up with a bigger target than if you were trying to shoot at like MOA-sized targets that are steel and for precision.
Right.
Then that's where you're going to want a different scope in general. Dialing turrets that are dialing in 10th mil, quarter MOA, whatever, you're going to want all that. But yeah, certainly for most hunting distances and knowing that the deer isn't going to step out or whatever at perfect 100-yard increments, all that stuff, it's dang good enough. And it's put a lot of deer in the freezer in the past.
Well, and like Ryan said, a margin of error that's still going to get you in the kill zone, which is a hit.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Cool.
Not just a hit, but you're in the kill zone. Like, you're going to get them.
It's
got
dead.
them.
Yes. So with that said, hopefully this has been a help for anybody out there who's been considering something with a BDC reticle. You had some trepidations, or you're trying to learn how to use your BDC reticle better. But as usual, this is one thing. If there's anything out there that we are okay at, it's usually optics stuff, I would say. But if you have any questions about that, definitely let us know. Hit us up in the comments below. Hit us up on Instagram, or just give us a call as usual. Like Ryan said, you might even talk to Ryan or one of his other cohorts down there on the phones, and we'd love to help you out with that sort of thing. So, without further ado, we'll see you on the next one, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank
You said
Ryan.
WSM.
I know. I wasn't gonna call you out on it.
I'm tired of the comments.
I haven't seen a comment in a while. I guess you haven't said wisdom in a while.
Yeah, you guys keep saying it. I'm trying to be
Inclusive.
inclusive. Yeah.
Well,
Or you
next
know
thing
what?
you know,
maybe the way I talk got canceled.
Next thing you know, you're gonna take a whole 10 seconds out of our 10-minute talk saying Winchester Short Magnum.
I could keep lengthening it. The 300 Winchester Short Magnum.
Winchester Shire Shortimus
Hey,
Magnumus.
we need to do a quick little podcast here in the near future on that news story that you read.
Oh, did you see this, Ryan? World record group at 1,000 yards, shot with none other than the 300 Wisdom.
Wait a minute.
They
Shot
can't-
with a golden eagle.
And a Golden Eagle
And a-
rifle scope
and a
on
Golden
top,
Eagle.
right?
Happened to
Yes.
be chambered.
Oh, happened?
Yes.
Oh,
the
just
Golden Eagle
happened?
made it happen. The
Arbitrary?
300 Wisdom was lucky enough to be fired from a rifle that was adorned with a Golden Eagle. So, for those of you watching out there, we actually had some listeners and some viewers send in this information. As I said, tell Mark as soon as possible. We know he's going to be so excited.
I think the digital ink was still wet on that article, and Trenton Brenny sent it to me, and he's like, ha ha ha, Mark. and then I said, like, damn it, when he sees this, and then here we are.
Yeah, we had a lot of messages.
Kudos to that guy, though, because he was, 84 years old? 83?
I didn't
I
see
didn't
that
get
part.
the age.
He was an older gentleman, and he stopped shooting IDPA and USPSA because he couldn't move fast enough. So he just moved on to breaking.
He just
world
said, all right,
records.
cool,
I'll just shoot stationary. No
Should
big
be a
deal.
sniper.
That's
take
incredible.
this.
A 2.5-inch group at 1K. Did you see the win value that he was fighting?
No.
20 plus.
No.
No.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, man.
I admittedly I saw the headline and I was like, I'm out.
The headline was, as with any news story, that's pretty much all I need to know.
Right, but I did not catch the
I
win
don't need the
value.
All he said was 300 was a world record.
Done.
That's pretty incredible. Kudos to that gentleman.
Yes.